looking at things, whether it's made in Canada, as long as it's not made in the States.
Not go to the United States while Donald Trump is in power.
According to economic experts, after President Trump issued tariffs, numerous countries voiced opposition, and the wave of boycotting American goods spread rapidly. Especially in Canada, strikes and protests occurred continuously. Canadians were determined to reject American products, causing brands that once dominated to now face collapse. Retail giants like Walmart had to close more than 10 branches due to inability to manage. If everything continues, not only Walmart, but many other major brands will also face severe crises. Don't take your eyes off the screen. This video will reveal 5 companies that are disappearing, which you won't believe. 1. Walmart struggles. Revenue in Canada drops 8%. 10 branches closed due to the wave of boycotting American goods. Leading today's list is Walmart, the global retail giant facing unprecedented pressure from the Trump administration's tariffs and a strong boycott from Canadian consumers. In Canada, consumers increasingly prioritize shopping at local chains like Loblaws and Metro while supporting made-in-Canada products. In reaction to U.S. tariff policies, outrage quickly spread. Thousands of Canadians called to use money to speak, resolutely boycotting American goods, especially Walmart, a symbol they consider representing trade hegemony. On social media, campaigns like Buy Canadian with the slogan, "No dollars for U.S. goods," appeared densely. As a result, Walmart's revenue in the Canadian market dropped by up to 8% in 2024, leading to the closure of 10 branches and hundreds of employees losing their jobs. Not only Canada, the wave of opposing American goods also spread to Europe and Asia. In France and Germany, many consumer groups called to boycott American brands in response to the America First policy, which is considered harmful to global trade. In South Korea, local retailers took the opportunity to strongly promote domestic products with the slogan, "Koreans use Korean goods." In India, the wave of economic nationalism also made Walmart struggle when expanding the Flipkart chain, considered by domestic public opinion as Americanized. In the US, Walmart also did not escape the whirlpool of difficulties. About 60% of the company's imported goods come from China, making them particularly vulnerable to the additional 30% tariffs imposed by the Trump administration in 2025. As a result, the prices of many items, especially household goods and furniture, went soared, with some items increasing up to 7 times the average inflation rate in April. To minimize damage, Walmart announced widespread price increases, a move that made American consumers even more cautious. In an effort to cope, Walmart shifted its supply chain, reducing the import rate from China from 80% to 60%, while increasing the import rate from India to 25% and investing over $6 billion in modern logistics centers in Mexico. However, the new supply chain had not yet stabilized when Walmart had to cut an additional 2,500 managerial and technology staff in the US. But Walmart is not the only victim. As the earthquake named Trump tariffs spreads, many names once as solid as a rock in the retail, technology, and manufacturing industries are now also reeling. Some lost market share, others faced equally intense boycott waves, even from markets once considered home turf. The next name on this list, once praised as a symbol of the American dream, is now becoming the focus of disappointment and resistance. 2. Tesla no longer has a foothold due to the statements of its leader. Not only products, but the image of Elon Musk himself is causing Tesla to face a strong global boycott. In Canada, Tesla's sales dropped by about 70% from December 2024 to January 2025, according to preliminary data from S&P Global. The main reason is the federal government's temporary suspension of the IZEV incentive program and some provincial subsidies, causing Tesla car prices to increase significantly. However, Musk's personal image also contributed significantly to this decline. Many Canadian consumers have publicly opposed Musk. Alain Roy, a resident of Quebec, sold both his Tesla cars and canceled his Cybertruck order to protest Musk's political views. He shared, "I don't want to support someone with such controversial actions and statements." Tesla takedown protests have taken place in many cities like Ottawa, Vancouver, and Saskatoon, with hundreds of people participating to oppose Musk's role in the Trump administration. In Surrey, British Columbia, protesters held up banners, "Elon be gone," and "Democracy dies in apathy" in front of the Tesla dealership. The situation is no better in Europe. In Germany, Tesla's sales dropped more than 70% compared to the same period last year, while the electric vehicle market grew by 30%. In France and Portugal, sales decreased by 45% and 50% respectively. In China, the government tightened regulations on data and security, making it difficult for Tesla to maintain market share. Domestic competitors like BYD and NIO are taking the opportunity to expand market share as Chinese consumers increasingly prioritize domestic brands. In the face of strong reactions, Elon Musk still affirmed he would continue to hold the position of Tesla's CEO for at least the next 5 years. He stated, "I want to maintain reasonable control over the company." Can Tesla separate the brand image from Elon Musk? As consumers increasingly care about the values and beliefs a brand represents, being too closely tied to a controversial individual can be a double-edged sword. From an electric car company stuck in the oversized shadow of its founder, we move on to another giant, this time in the field of e-commerce. Amazon, with its empire spanning from warehouses to cloud computing, was once seen as a symbol of global convenience and efficiency. But as tariff policies and economic nationalism rise, what was once Amazon's strength now becomes a burden. And this time, it's not an individual, but the company's business model that is being seriously questioned in many countries. 3. Amazon, the giant facing resistance from both customers and employees. Amazon is exploiting labor and increasing consumer prices. We need to boycott their monopoly services. Such harsh reactions have spread from social media to protests, reflecting the growing dissatisfaction of both customers and employees with this e-commerce giant. In Canada, the government's imposition of a 3% digital services tax from early 2025 on large tech companies, including Amazon, has created strong pressure on retail prices. According to a report by the Canadian Retail Council, product prices on Amazon Canada have increased by an average of 8 to 10% in the first 3 months of the year, while shipping and order processing costs have also increased by more than 12%. As a result, Amazon Prime subscriptions have dropped sharply, with an estimated over 250,000 members canceling the service in the first quarter of 2025. Canadian consumers have instead turned to domestic shopping apps like Temu, BuyBeaver, and MapleScan. These platforms not only support made-in-Canada products, but also commit to stable prices and promote the local economy. However, the pressure on Amazon doesn't just come from customers. A series of strikes and employee protests have taken place at major warehouses in Toronto, Montreal, and Vancouver. According to a report by CBC News, in the first quarter of 2025, the number of strikes related to working conditions at Amazon increased by nearly 40% compared to the same period last year. Employees accuse the company of making them work in stressful environments with strict sales pressure, reduced rest time, and inadequate protection against labor risks. This dissatisfaction is not new. Previously, labor unions and international media such as The Guardian and Bloomberg have repeatedly raised issues about working conditions at Amazon globally. However, the combination of the digital services tax, high prices, and the boycott wave has made the pressure on Amazon greater than ever. Meanwhile, competitors like Shopify and local e-commerce platforms quickly took the opportunity to expand their market share. Shopify, a platform favored by small and medium-sized businesses, recorded a 25% revenue growth in the first quarter of 2025, largely thanks to attracting customers seeking flexible and seller-friendly alternatives. Apps like Temu and BuyBeaver also recorded user growth of 30% to 50% in Canada during the same period. Globally, Amazon also faces many challenges from changing tax policies and new regulations on e-commerce in many countries. According to a report by Statista, Amazon's global revenue in the first quarter of 2025 slightly decreased by 3% compared to the same period last year. partly due to the impact of new taxes and prolonged opposition in key markets such as Canada, Europe, and the US. However, Amazon still has certain advantages with its large-scale logistics system, strong investment capacity in technology, and customer service. The company is also testing many new initiatives to improve working conditions, such as increasing base wages, applying automation to reduce the burden on workers, and enhancing transparency in management. But the big question is whether Amazon can truly adapt to the new environment, where consumers increasingly care about social values, sustainability, and labor fairness, or will continue to face an increasingly fierce wave of resistance. At this time, is the digital empire business model and harsh work culture still suitable for Amazon to maintain its leading position in global e-commerce? 4. Starbucks collapses in Canada, boycott, strike, and unprecedented crisis. If you think that Starbucks still maintains its position as the coffee king in Canada, then reality is showing a much more complex picture. In recent years, the domestic coffee chain, Tim Hortons, and local brands have been increasingly prioritized by consumers, especially when price and experience are decisive factors. According to reports, Starbucks revenue in Canada decreased by about 12% in fiscal year 2024 compared to the previous year. Meanwhile, Tim Hortons recorded a 5% growth in the same period, thanks to a strategy of stable pricing and expanding its store network. Under competitive pressure, Starbucks laid off about 1,100 employees in Canada, while cutting 30% of the items on the menu to optimize operations. However, the more worrying issue lies inside the stores, where employees are rising up as a voice that cannot be ignored. Many Starbucks employees have publicly expressed outrage over low wages and stressful working conditions. A barista in Toronto shared in an interview, "We work from morning to night. Constant pressure and the pay is not enough to live. Even have to work unpaid overtime because of overload. Management doesn't listen, only cares about sales." Another employee in Vancouver said bluntly, "Starbucks talks a lot about good work culture, but the reality is employees are forced to overwork, have no proper rest rights, and do not receive necessary support when problems occur." These grievances are not just isolated complaints. In 2024, prolonged strikes occurred in many major cities such as Toronto, Montreal, and Vancouver, attracting the attention of media and the public. Employees demanded higher minimum wages, improved working conditions, and more transparency in management. This reaction seriously damages the image of Starbucks, a brand once known for a modern, friendly, and premium lifestyle. Now, that image is being questioned as consumers begin to ask about social responsibility and fair treatment of the workforce. Meanwhile, Tim Hortons, with a close image, reasonable prices, and ties to the community, is fully leveraging this advantage. Many customers said they prefer Tim Hortons because the coffee is good, reasonably priced, and it's a Canadian brand. The question is, can Starbucks adjust its strategy to regain its position in the Canadian market? They need not only to balance prices, but also to improve working conditions and reshape the brand image to match the expectations of consumers and employees. 5. Canadian customers abandon Carnival. The $211 billion disaster awaiting the U.S. tourism industry. The wave of opposition to American goods is not only spreading in retail and technology, but also has a profound impact on tourism. One of the key economic sectors of the U.S. Carnival Corporation, the leading tourism operator with dozens of cruise ships operating worldwide, is facing a serious decline from the Canadian market, a long-time important source of customers. According to reports from the Canadian Tourism Association, the number of Canadian tourists choosing Carnival-organized trips decreased by 12% in 2024 compared to the previous year. Thousands of Canadians canceled or postponed travel plans to the U.S., instead prioritizing cruise lines and ports owned or managed by European and Asian companies. This is explained not only by the impact of tariff and service tax policies, but also by the anti-American sentiment that is increasingly spreading within the Canadian community. An economic study by Boston University estimates that if the number of Canadian tourists decreases by 10%, the U.S. economy could lose about $2.11 billion annually, directly affecting tens of thousands of jobs in the tourism services industry and related sectors. This also means that many workers in ports, hotels, restaurants, and associated services are at risk of losing jobs or having reduced income. The anti-American sentiment not only affects travel choices, but also creates invisible barriers in economic and social relations between the two countries. Canadian tourism workers who used to work on U.S. tours also clearly feel the change in the mood of customers and colleagues, causing many to worry about the future of their jobs. In this context, Carnival Corporation is trying to adjust its strategy by expanding cooperation with European and Asian partners while improving services to retain existing customers. However, the biggest challenge remains rebuilding trust and long-term cooperation with Canadian customers, something considered the key to the sustainable recovery of the U.S. tourism industry. Can the U.S. tourism industry and Carnival Corporation overcome the current tensions to rebuild relations with Canada? This is not just an economic story, but also a matter of diplomacy and culture in a turbulent, globalized era. Leading U.S. corporations such as Walmart, Tesla, Amazon, Starbucks, and Carnival are facing an increasing wave of boycotts, especially in the Canadian market, one of the important strategic markets. Declining revenue, employee strikes, and customers switching to domestic products and services are causing them serious losses in both finance and reputation. In the context of increasing global competition and trade tensions, the question is whether these companies can quickly adapt, rebuild their image, and restore trust from consumers. Their future not only affects the economy, but also reflects a profound change in current consumer trends and international relations. If you find this video interesting, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next engaging content. Please share your opinions in the comment section. Thank you for watching, and don't forget what we share in the video is for reference and analysis from multiple perspectives. You should combine with other sources of information to have a more complete and objective view.